So, everyone, this is Trisha Margus from 90 Degree Turns, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Alan Steinfeld, who is the author of Making Contact. Alan, I'm so excited for this conversation today. I know that you have a history of interviewing very many different people in the realms of consciousness and spirituality, and I am just so excited as someone who loves to talk to people and always grow and expand. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do love talking to people. And I think there's nothing else to talk about really of interest. Are we going to talk about sports or clothing or shopping? But, or are we going to talk about consciousness? Really, that's the thing. And, we could talk about consciousness, but I think you have to use it in your own life. It's a great topic to talk about because it's endless, but how are we living day to day? That is where it really is important, I feel. How are you with yourself? That's what I'm always checking in on with myself. How did I react to that situation and that? And then how do I keep expanding my awareness?
Oh, that's absolutely what we're all here about, right, on Earth. We're trying to consciously always expand and to roll with the flow of life, while still expanding and growing and raising our vibration, no matter what happens externally, right?
Exactly. So that's why I thought UFOs and their intersection with consciousness is the most interesting thing, because people have been talking about consciousness for 10,000 years in India. It's all every time I interview Deepak Chopra, who's a great guy, he says it's all consciousness. That's basically his bottom line. And I say, Deepak, there is only consciousness, and we're in time and space. So he interviewed me about this book, Making Contact, and I tried to get him to come back around to this is happening in historical time. When you talk about consciousness, you sort of step outside of history, you step outside of time, because consciousness is timeless. But if we're going to talk about this phenomena and have it be relevant to people, we have to do that in terms of the time evolution of society, of the human race, and what that means as we intersect this bigger reality. That's what's exciting for me.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And what you mentioned, how it's timeless, right? It's boundless, and consciousness doesn't know any kind of bounds because it's infinite. What we think of our world, where we are here right now, is like a tiny blip in the galaxy, like right you have behind in your background there. We're just a tiny blip, and all of it resonates together, right? And functions as a giant unit that is symbiotic and coherent and harmonious. So I think it's
right,
absolutely
exactly.
up.
So
I think it's absolutely up.
So how do we intersect that with like a moment in history that is going to affect all of us and actually expand our consciousness? I mean, in a way, maybe you can't expand consciousness because it's already infinite, but our awareness of whatever this thing is, consciousness.
Okay, yeah, so the expansionness of consciousness. So how about we dive into what is your journey? What led you to writing this book? Because I really would love to talk more about what inspired you to write Making Contact, right? And the people that you chose to have inside of it, because it's an incredible lineup of people that truly, I think, cross all different kinds of, I guess you could call it genres within the community of spirituality and awakening. So, but let's start with you. What started this awakening journey in your life, Alan?
Well, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was growing up. I loved Star Trek and outer space. And I always thought there was something more. Like, how could we be the only place in existence where there's life? And of course, it looked like, when I found out there were other stars, other suns, I realized there had to be other planets. If there were other planets, there's other life. So I just felt intuitively life is an emergent property of all that is. It has to be. I mean, look how grass grows between the sidewalks in the city. I mean, life is, we're living in a living universe. We are in a living universe. This is not a dead universe. So I think we have to change our idea. And this is what no scientists don't really consider that. They think it's a dead universe and life came into being. What if it's a living universe and we're sort of the culmination of an aspect of that livingness, the complexity of that. And then there, of course, there's beings more complex than us. So anyway, I was thinking about all that. And then I had this experience where I think, and you don't know, but I think I was abducted myself or taken, or because I driving cross country with my girlfriend, and we stopped by this deserted canal, and we were just really tired from driving all day. It said, enter at your own risk. And we just passed out. We just kind of fell asleep, and we felt like we were frozen or in suspended animation all through the night. And then I woke up the next morning, felt something a little weird happened, but and then I had a mark on the back of my leg, a little 4-pronged puncture mark that I had no idea where that came from. We're just sleeping. Where's a little puncture mark? And I didn't notice it. Someone else noticed it. And because who looks at the back of their leg? Really, it's like, so. And then I started, coincidentally or not, after I got back to New York, meeting all these people involved in the UFO field, like Bud Hopkins. You know who Bud Hopkins was?
I do not.
He is the godfather of UFO abductions. He didn't discover it, but he was the first to put together patterns in people's experience. If you start with Betty and Barney Hill, who were like probably one of the earliest people to be abducted, there were certain things that happened to them that when Bud started to investigate this, and he's written a bunch of books. He wrote a book called Missing Time. He wrote a book called Intruders, The Watchers. Anyway, he has a lot of different books on the subject. He also turned John part of their experience out. What is so fearful about it? Eventually, I was regressed and back to that moment, and it wasn't as fearful as I thought it was. But what is traumatic is that, and this is what the US government is going through now in its disclosure movement, this redefines reality. This is not like anything we know. So we want our reality to be safe, secure, and predictable. We want to know, you're going to work in the morning, or the sun's going to come up, or, you're on solid ground. But when you start to include this other level of phenomena, it's like all bets are off. It's like the world is not what we thought it was. And we are traumatized by that. That is the most frightening thing. Not that there's aliens here, which is kind of interesting, but that these beings exist in another level of reality. They use a different type of physics. They are vibrationally different. So when you intersect with them, it's like that's a little off-putting when they are not functioning like us. I look at you, you're a human. I'm sure you're a mother and father, you eat, you sleep, you do all those things. But when you meet these beings, they're nothing like anything we know. So there's an adjustment period.
Do you feel that's why many people, if you look at from maybe like Dolores Cannon's work, right, she was doing a lot of past life regressions or alternate timeline regressions, whatever you want to call it, but regressions where people would go back into like blips of their subconscious that they had blanked out, right, or blocked out because their conscious couldn't handle it. You feel that the fear that potentially could come up with seeing a being that you don't recognize, right, or doesn't look like us, or can read your mind or something like that, right? Because it's all energy. So it's not even that they're reading your mind, but the frequency that they can perceive is there that connects to you. But do you think the fear that comes up when you meet this being, that it's something that our collective consciousness as humans can grow past, as more that we become aware of these entities, and beings and the galactic history that is around us all?
Yeah. So the question is, I think we could adapt to these new vibrations, but we're not being given a chance by the government who says, we don't know, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. So they want to be in control of the situation. I think for a few reasons. First, they don't know what's going on really. So if they don't know what's going on, how are they going to say, guess what? There's something here and we don't know what's going on. So that's one level. They don't understand it. They don't know how to explain it to us there. And it has to do with spirituality. So the government or those in charge don't understand a level of spirituality and consciousness. So they're not even using that language. So we in this conscious community have to start to use the language of consciousness in relationship to UFOs in order to make it at least acceptable to our community. And then maybe other people can start to understand it in terms of that bigger picture. So it's not like we're just being visited by little creatures from another planet. It's a whole shift of perception that's happening. That's more than just visitors. That's why you've heard the term UAP, right?
Yes.
That means unexplained aerial phenomena. That replaced the word
UFO.
unidentified flying objects. So really, phenomena replaces the word object. The other two words are basically the same. And why is that? Because these are more than objects. There's a certain synchronicity that happens, or sometimes people feel great. Some people feel awful. There's a kind of a shift of altered states that happen. So this is much more than objects in the sky. This is a whole range of intersection with human consciousness that is distorting. It distorts our field. And the more we stay aware, focused, present, the easier I think it is to adapt to that shifting perspective. And that's the work I really want to point out in this book. Preparing is for the new realities of extraterrestrial existence. The subtitle. How do we prepare? We prepare by being as lucid and aware of each moment as much as we can.
Yes, that I agree that is the key, because no matter what happens in our external environment, if we keep ourselves centered, right, and ourselves stable in a way that we understand what's going on within us, then the external environment will naturally match that in a vibrational level. But on top of it, if something does come out of the blue and left field, or whatever the phrase is, that we'll be able to handle it. Because I mean, the world we're living in, we all know that currently the state of affairs is crazy. And I don't think any of us could have imagined this current society and what is trying to be thrown on the population, or on the human population, let alone the rest of the beings that live here.
So you also asked me about the people in the book. Yeah. So I figured, since no one really knows what's going on in this field, including the government, and I've been to all the conferences for the last 20 years, I've probably been to all the great UFO conferences. And I got to know people I really respect, really the people I feel are the most intelligent in the field. And then when I talked to this publishing company, St. Martin's Press, who's a pretty big publisher, we kind of came up with the idea of, let's do an anthology and get the greatest, it's like a greatest hits album. So, because, it's like the blind man and the elephant, everybody has a little piece and you put it all together. Yeah. I think if you put all these pieces together, you might see the elephant, because, everyone's seeing it from their particular angle of research. So we have Nick Pope there, who's just looking at it from a government nuts and bolts angle. And then you have Linda Moulton Howe, who's talking to government insiders. And then I got an unpublished essay by John Mack, who was a Harvard professor of psychiatry. And he started to talk to abductees. He wrote a book called Abductions, which really upset Harvard, because they said, what do you mean? We can't talk about aliens. This is Harvard. and they were talking about it. So, everyone, this is such a very complex topic. Like I said, it's not just people. You would think it would be easy if, like, oh yeah, there's something out there and they want to visit, and that's great. But it's much more involved. Somehow we don't even understand. Like, maybe some people suggest in the book that they're actually here all the time. Maybe they don't come from anywhere. Maybe there is no out there. Maybe it's all here. So maybe whatever we're calling UFOs, ETs, are some other aspect of the reality that we're not even seeing now. I talked to Grant Cameron about that, who also has a chapter in this book. He says, they may not be aliens, he said. And I said, Grant, I just wrote a book where I'm thinking they're aliens. So, I hope they are aliens, but what are you going to do? So anyway, I think in order to give a reader, especially someone who's new to the topic and who's finally taking it seriously, because the government is now saying you can take it seriously. Obama comes out and says, you know what? I think there's crash retrieval. Did you see that video where he actually comes out
I
and
actually
said,
have not. No. I've seen some things about the Pentagon and other like bigger groups talking about it, and definitely like old like generals and Navy people that are able to now finally speak on it. Well, not that they're allowed to, but they go out anyway because it's been a lot of time past. But tell me more about this video when he comes out.
the video with Obama?
President Barack Obama talks UFOs with talk show host James Corden.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is.
Mr. Obama says UFOs were actually one of the first things he asked about after taking office, but he did not say whether he thought UFOs were alien in origin. Congress will be briefed next month on recent sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena in U.S. airspace.
If I was president, that's the first thing I'd say. Can I go to Area 51? Or wherever you supposedly have them?
Yes.
Like he comes right out and almost says it, he almost
Gives the green light. Like,
yeah, it's like someone told him, okay, it's okay to talk about this. So anyway, Obama says on this program, this late night talk show, when he's being interviewed, he says, yes, we might have some crash retrievals. He actually comes out and says that. So here he is, former president, admitting to the fact that there's something there.
so do you feel like that the fact that like even like former President Obama, he got the green light to say, okay, you think that there's somebody inside the system that's saying, listen, now you may talk about this? Or, because everything's very strategic and planned in the
Absolutely,
right?
This is why the whole thing's unfolding. Someone, and we don't know who that is, and we may never know who that is, but someone or a group of people saying, okay, we're going to roll this out slowly. So it's suspicious. Why are we not being told the truth? What is the big secret? So what? There's people visiting.
Yeah, I've got a theory though. I feel like if more people understood the depth of everyone has different theories of how involved extraterrestrials are on Earth, right? And like the seeding of the collective or the human consciousness, like how that's happened historically. But if most people knew where I think we really come from, or how that we're not just these human bodies, that there's so much more to us than what we are physically, that would be completely a game changer in the society we live in. People would realize that the things that they do on the daily basis, in the grand scheme of things, don't really so yes, if people realize how much more they are than just the physical bodies that we are and the structure that our society is currently implemented in, right? They would, I think they'd realize that there's absolutely, it's almost the inevitable now to think that you can't stop consciousness from expanding, right? And that there's always going to be entities around. Whether we can perceive them or not is a question of perspective, right?
Well,
Some people
we're learning to perceive them. We are learning to perceive them.
Yes, because there's people who can channel, right? And they're able to like put their consciousness aside temporarily, let people come in. Like you interviewed Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar,
Exactly.
right? That is a prime example of someone who has a true connection with a entire race of beings that are able to come and talk to humanity.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fascinating?
It is. I remember personally, I watched his stuff way back in for me, like 2016, 2015. And And I honestly, I was a little iffy on channels, because some people I feel like they have a true ability, and other ones have a really good way of making it seem like it's real, And so,
There are good channels and there's people who are not good channels and probably aren't even channeling. So
yeah,
it's yeah. And some people like some others and I don't like some. And then anyway, yeah,
you resonate with what you resonate with, like
exactly.
but
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate, I think, Daryl's work, and I know that you've done different interviews with him before as well. Phenomenal guest, and it's very interesting to see him talk as a person too.
He's a great person. He wrote that chapter as himself. And I figured I really wanted Daryl in this book. So we go from the people looking at just the phenomena, just the nuts and bolts, to the researchers who are just making comments on the interactions, to people having experiences, like, and people I call abductees, to people I call contactees, people who are having an equal exchange with these other beings. So when you're abducted, sometimes it might not be your preference, but contactees seem to have a more uplifting, but there's been a change for some people where at first they thought this was upsetting, and then they realized, wow, this is really expanding. So you do get this conversion factor from abductees to contactees where they're saying, yes, that was sort of my case. It's like, what else would I be thinking about? What would I want to do? Like be an accountant or whatever, It's like, what's the most interesting thing happening on this planet to human civilization, to this interface of consciousness? It's the arrival of the others, meeting the others, So that's why I put together this book, because I thought it's about time everyone knew the really amazing research so many people have been doing for 40 years and how dedicated these people are. They're not running around with tinfoil hats. They're talking and formulating ideas and trying to figure out the next level of conscious interaction for our civilization. I mean, this is,
it's truly expansive and mind-blowing. It's
yes,
it's
it is.
it's like an endless road of expansion, right? Where as long as we can buckle up for the ride, right? Some of us are going to be contactees, right? Other ones are going to be the channelers. Other people are going to be like journalists, like me, being able to talk with you and figure out from all the others what's happening. We all play like a role, right, in this, like the world's awakening, right?
Thank you for saying that. Yes, exactly right. Yes. And you're doing a role right here. This is your role, bringing this to the public. And so what does 90 degree mean?
90-degree turns. So when I originally started the channel podcast back in 2018, I was really into reading Drunvala Melchizedek's book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, right? And in there, he talks about how even in physics, like when you go into another dimension, you have to take a 90-degree turn, right? Like you're going up to another level. So I took that and kind of made it into a 90-degree turn. So you can see, like in the logo, it's our like rebranded logo, where you have a box that is infinitely interconnected, and there's 90-degree turns all throughout it, but it's expanding while it's interconnected together.
Oh,
So it's very like esoteric.
that's a great logo. That's
I use the
really
website
great
for
logo.
Yeah.
That is, I think it originally I think Drunvala got it from like Buckminster Fuller or somebody like that, who says everything happens not for the reason you come, but at 90 degrees from the thing you think you're coming for.
Oh, that's
I think
that's
that's what I thought.
interesting. I've never heard of that before, but that's interesting.
Do you know Buckminster Fuller?
No, it's the first time I've heard of the name.
He was like he was a genius who developed the geodesic dome. He understood reality differently. It was either him or Marshall McLuhan who said that. Do you know Marshall McLuhan?
No. I'm learning so much. This is great.
Marshall McLuhan was a genius of media. He lived in the 60s, 70s, but he sort of predicted the internet. He predicted the digital age, and he'd say, we'll be living inside our computers, which is what we're doing right now. He predicted.
Yeah.
Said we used to live inside our newspapers, then our televisions. I don't know if he really predicted the computer, but he understood what was happening, that media becomes a way of cognition. It's like we think media, like this digital format, sort of starts to direct the culture itself until the next thing comes along, whatever that will be, whatever the next
Yeah, I mean,
form
I
of
think it looks like it's going to like the metaverse now. If you look at what like
what is the
Facebook.
metaverse?
Oh man. Okay, so from my understanding, it's like taking so Facebook, right? Zuckerberg, he wants to create like metaverse. He wants to claim it as his own essentially. And it is imagine like virtual reality being more real than us sitting here talking like this.
Really?
It's a
Okay.
universe that is endless and expansive, but based off of artificial intelligence.
And how does that look then? How would that look like?
I mean, I don't honestly know if there's any barriers to what it could look like. Because if you think about it, we are more into our phones now as a society, and technology has become a crutch for everybody.
Right.
Right? Even those who've been used to without it, it's become something that's so ingrained where it's almost a part of us, right? And then people always theorize, oh, we'll have chips and things like that into our skin. But what if you have like goggles, VR goggles on you, and you're able to build a life? Like social media is a perfect representation of that, because you have a social media presence, a life that is almost larger than sometimes people's real everyday lives. That's where they live. So it's, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying, because I'm just thinking. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that concept of how social media and the online world is bigger than what is truly like real and tangible in the physical sense, right? So
Right.
I'm not an expert on like what the metaverse could be, but from my understanding, it's that it's taking AI in a route and infusing it with human consciousness in a way that our outer reality, like our technological reality, is more real and more important and valuable, perceived valuable, to be perceived that it is valuable than our right now physical embodiment of the human.
But what you're saying, and I'm just thinking about, is like that might be a sort of doorway into actually how ETs function in their reality, because they are able to merge consciousness with their craft. I mean, it's not as hardware kind of like our stuff, because their minds, it's just my guess, is more fluid in their integration with their technology. We still have this thing here that's separate from but imagine if our minds were actually creating the computer as we were using it, and there was this fluid system, and we could get it to do things like go through dimensions. This is sort of how the ETs, I think, operate. So whatever's happening in the metaverse might be, and I don't know, preparing us for this next level of interfacing with beings who actually live in those dimensions, but it may be a little more organically than this is very primitive form of that.
Yeah,
But I think you're on.
I could see that. And I think it's important to mention the organic fusion of it, right? Because if it's organic and we can still keep who we are, keep our essence of our soul and our like we don't lose ourselves in it, but mold together, then that could, we'll see where it takes us. That it's definitely something that to ponder and to think about.
Right. Keeping your soul is a big part of it, though. Yes. Keep your soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Definitely.
very interesting. I would love to know, you have had the opportunity to go to all these different events, right? Within consciousness, ufology, I'm sure all the spiritual events that have been around, right? So I think it's such a cool opportunity, but I'd love to know from your perspective, where do you see consciousness and this community going? Because for my short time in it, there's always a lot of internal drama that happens and all these things but I hope, at least I hope that people can get together and rise above the kind of divide conquer tactics that humanity is known for following for centuries and millennia. Where do you, I guess, what has been your experience being an MC in these different conferences and meeting all these people throughout the decades?
Well, just because people say they're spiritual doesn't mean they actually are. People are human and are susceptible to drama and whatever, no matter. I mean, I think there are people who can rise above that, and that's where the work really happens. But for the most part, people are susceptible. They may be more aware of the drama, but they, interactions, talking about someone, whatever people do, humans do. But I think there's a slightly higher standard in this community, slightly, and not to everyone. I mean, there's a lot of people fabricating their stories, wanting a center of attention, ego, but stepping back from those individual kind of things, there's an awareness for the most part of another level of conversation. So where they're going is trying to work on their own stuff, because at least they're aware they have stuff to work on. If there's an argument, disagreement, people can recognize it's ego or whatever, where maybe in another community, it might not be as easy. So there's a more evolved basis, but we still have a lot of work to do. Absolutely. We're still human. There's still a lot of dramas there, a lot of stuff but if we can set an example and be more harmonious, that could help shift the rest of the population that says, look at those people, they're hypocrites. And maybe there are some people who are hypocrites. It's true. And don't live their truth and maybe say one thing and do another. That's why we always have to keep looking at ourselves. Am I being what I'm saying? I think there's more awareness of that. But you get great people in everything. In sports, you get people who are living their truth. You get in every field. Occasionally you get a politician who lives, but most of the time you don't. But so I think on the whole, there's more awareness of conscious intent. I think that's why, the climate condition is so important, because the two things that are bringing our planet together is climate crisis and UFOs. That pulls us together as a one planet civilization. And those are the things that are going to take us into a new heaven and a new earth. We're going to have to learn to get along with who's ever out there, and we're going to have to clean up the mess we've made here. This is the future for not just this community, but for all the communities, all the different levels of contact, of organizations. So that's the future. How do we create a new heaven and a new earth? That's been predicted, but we're in the shift now. Shift happens, and it's happening right now. So, so how do we behave to our Joe? You ever study with Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
How do we become the best we can? How do we become the best human we can be? How do we access our highest potential? How do we become the ultimate of what we're here to do? This is what I think this community is at least more aware of. And then we have to do the work.
Yeah, that internal work is pivotal and never ending, but that's the beauty of it, because it's like we get to recreate ourselves every moment, like in a work of art. So when it comes to contact, do you feel like when people talk about not just contact, but moving from different dimensions, from let's say 3D to 5D, a lot of people want to ignore the 3D entirely and just skip to the 5, right? Almost like in a form of escapism. Right. So what is your perspective on that? Knowing that you've had different contact experiences, and you've talked to people who know about all these different things, what's your perspective?
you don't get to 5D unless you go through 3D. There's no shortcuts. It's like, I'm just going to skip all the human experience. No, we're here to have the human experience, because when you embody the humanness, you own this dimension. You don't get to the next level until you are embodied in the essence of your own being. And then when you could do that, then karmically you complete the cycle, and then you graduate to 5D. But unless you can be at peace with everything and everyone, including yourself, you still have work to do in 3D. You may have some 5D experiences, but you won't really graduate totally. You won't ascend until you kind of ground yourself in this world and take responsibility for your actions, for your attitude, for having gratitude, all the things that we've been told really do work. Gratitude is the attitude of, and I was talking to someone the other day who's always complaining. Well, it was my mother, but I said to her, write down all the things you are grateful for. And so I thought, because she was complaining about something, and so I say that to her, and she goes, okay, done. I thought she was going to take, but she was going to take like at least 10 minutes. She goes, and she was sort of making a joke, meaning that she didn't get what she was, there was no gratitude there. So it's like, that was just shocking to me. That was just so.
I feel being grateful for even the littlest things, right? Having a warm bed to sleep in, and having people to love and to share life with. It's the little things that make up the big world that we live in.
Yes, having a roof over you, having a warm food, good food to eat, having nice clothes to wear, having, the electric lights, having a computer, having, telephone. These are little things that people, if it wasn't for all that, we'd be living in caves, hunting and gathering, and that wasn't a lot of fun back then. That was much harder. And sitting on a computer, like having a cup of coffee, But no, we are here to wake up to these new realities, and that's the exciting part of this human adventure.
Yes.
So
well, thank you, Alan. This has been such a great conversation. I would love if you could share where we can find your book, where we can connect with you.
Thank you. You can find my book on Amazon, and it really is about opening your mind to new levels of reality, so we can really make contact with beings that are on higher dimensions, that are here to welcome us into a greater awareness and give us more intelligent observations of the world, so we can increase our evolutionary potential. This is why we're making contact. This is why we're on the threshold of a new world, of meeting the other and being grateful and awakening to these fantastic possibilities that are now waiting for us to wake up. So we're coming into a new world, and it's really fun, and we have a lot to look forward to, and the new world awaits us. And so let's keep graduating to those levels of possibility.
Yes, let's do it. And then do you have any social medias or any way if anyone wants to contact you?
Thank you. Yeah, you can contact me on YouTube. That's youtube.com/new realities. You can look for me on Facebook, Alan Steinfeld. You can email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. Check me out on Instagram, Twitter. But my YouTube is really what I keep active in the most. I'm always putting up maybe 3 or 4 new realities videos a day. So and discovering new people. This field is so exciting. There's always some new genius coming up with a new perspective, and that's why I call my show New Realities, because I want to really be there on the cutting edge. So
Great. Well, we'll be there with you as we check out your channel, New Realities. And if anyone wants to, again, check out 90 Degree Turns, subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. As our motto here is that we expand the minds, beliefs, and perspectives of the collective. So let's continue doing that. Thank you, Ellen, for coming onto the show.
Well, thank you for expanding your belief, because I have to just say, UFOs are not about belief. They're about knowing, awareness, exploration. And I think if people keep that in mind, they won't have anything to fear. This is an expansion of who we are. So yes, get the book on Amazon or in your Barnes and Noble, and let me know what you think of it. You can email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. Thank you, Tricia.
Well, thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. All right,
Thanks,
everybody, have a great evening.